just a second, kind of an intro video to what's going to happen. And as that's happening, the team's going to be getting set up here and to be able to share their experience. So let's go ahead and look at the screen. And we're thankful to have you guys back from Alaska, and we're ready to hear what's going on.
Hey, Abundant Life. Just wanted to give you a quick little tour of where we're staying this week at Alaska. We're riding on the four-wheeler. This is Paradise Found. This is Joel and Trish Buchanan's house. It's where we're doing a lot of the firewood cutting, a lot of the work to help these missionaries so that they can be part of the community here, and we can help donate and do a lot of things. So right there, that's Trish. Trish is one of the Buchanans. She and Joel live here at Paradise Found. They're one of our missionaries. And this is their place. This is where we get to help out. So this is Joel and Trish's house here. Let me show you just how close they are to the beach and the beautiful view. So you'll see the mountains here and the gorgeous sky. It's nice and sunny today. It's been raining for the past couple of days. We get to go out on the water tomorrow and hopefully get some fish to donate to the other locals. But here, check out this view. So as you can see, it's pretty gorgeous out here, right near the water. You get that fresh, crisp breeze. It's been a great week. We're having a ton of fun. We're working hard, resting hard, having a great time getting to help Joel and Trish and Dave and their work here on Prince of Wales Island. We love you guys. We thank you so much for helping send us here. It's been a great trip, and we're going to see you Sunday when you're watching this video. But until then, we'll see you later.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We are happy to be back. We had such a great time. Just wanted to give you that small preview video of where we were staying at the Buchanan's house. But we had a good time. We experienced a lot of weather variance. We only had one sunny day, and that was the day I was able to record that. So other than that, we had a lot of rain. So what I want to do this morning is just share with you guys, where did we go? What did we do? How did we help? And then we're going to have a Q&A. I just want to give you guys as much information as I can about the trip and just fill you in about the mission in Prince of Wales, Alaska. So first thing is, where did we go? To be specific, we went to Prince of Wales, Alaska. So if you know where Alaska is, it's up in that corner of the map. It's a lot bigger than what you think. A lot of people don't realize this, but Alaska is 1/3 of the United States of the lower 48. You don't always see that because of the way that a map projects it, but Alaska is 3 times bigger than Texas, and it's 1/3 the size of the lower 48. So it's huge. So specifically in Alaska, we went to Kaufman Cove, which is on the northern part of the island. Let me give you an idea of just how long and how much it takes to get there from here. So first thing is we have to get to the airport, which thank you, Dean, Jen, and Dave for getting us there and back. Then we flew to Atlanta. Then from Atlanta, we flew to Seattle to Ketchikan, which is in Alaska. And the airport is actually on its own island. And so we had to take a boat from the airport to the mainland. Then we had to get a ride from that port to the ferry port. Then we had a 3-hour ferry ride and then a 2-hour car ride to get to where we were. So you'll see down at the bottom, but Gabe actually timed it from when we left the house to when we got back in our homes on the way back. It took 26 hours, 28 to 29 if you include when we woke up to when we finally got resting in our own beds. It was quite the trip, wasn't it? Pretty exhausting. Luckily, we had time to eat on the way home. We didn't have time on the way there. So we got very blessed as far as our flights went. It was very evident that God was over our trip and was making sure we got to where we needed to be and at the times that we had. There was one flight going into Ketchikan where I was worried we were going to miss our flight because the one had been delayed. And so we were landing about 10 minutes after the next plane had started boarding into Seattle. So if you've ever been into Seattle Airport, it's huge. And so I was worried we weren't going to make our next plane. But when we landed, well, we were almost landing and the stewardess come up and she's, Ellington? And we're like, yeah. She's like, I just want you to know that your gate is only 2 down from where we're landing. So you're going to make it in time. You can grab a coffee and you're going to catch your next plane. And let me tell you, I was worrying throughout that whole 4 to 5 hour flight that we were going to miss our next plane. But of course, God showed up and he made it happen. Just as something as simple as 2 gates away, just a little stroll down the airport. So just that was the first thing where I was like, all right, God's got us on this trip. I was ready for it. So that's how he did there. Just give you an idea if you want to come next year. So this next picture, this is Prince of Wales Island. So if you can see here, this is if you've seen Alaska, there's like this little stretch of islands that goes down to the side. Prince of Wales is in that. So that stretch from the northern to the southern point of the island is 131 miles. If you go to that next pic, to give you an idea of reference, that's the same distance from downtown Charlotte to downtown Raleigh, to give you an idea of how big the island is, or how little, if you put it into perspective. So a little bit about Prince of Wales. The lifestyle in Alaska is not what we expect here. First being is that this is normal attire. Jeans, having a hoodie or a jacket, a raincoat, depending on the day. We are always having layers on, and you're having to take them off, put them on, depending on what work you're doing. But when we got home, when we got out of the Charlotte airport, we're like, oh, it's hot. Hot and humid. And I think we were all sometime this week going, man, I miss the Alaska weather. It was nice and cool. So everything in Alaska is more expensive, especially in the island of Prince of Wales. So to give you a frame of reference, gas starts at $3 a gallon. That's in Ketchikan. That doesn't include how much it is on the island. A 24-pack of water, here it's normally about $3 to $4. It's $14 at their grocery store. And then I looked at this in our local store. There's just this little general store in the town that we stayed in. A Twinkie was $4 for one. So just to give you an idea, everything is more expensive there. There's a lot more vehicle maintenance. There's a lot more house maintenance that people have to do in order to keep up their homes against the weather. And as I mentioned, the next thing is drastic weather changes. So they have, one day we had sunny and 65 degrees. The next day it was 40 and cold and raining. They have pretty heavy winds if you live on the coast. They get battered with wind a lot, so they have to really build up their staining and their wind blocks. So they also get some snow. Believe it or not, they don't get a lot of snow compared to like Maine or some other northern states because they get so much rain, it's just slush for 6 to 8 months out of the year. And then there's a lot colder weather. And then, like I just mentioned, the winter is 6 to 8 months. So if they're lucky, they'll have half of a year that's dark and cold, and then the other half they'll have it as warm and rainy. But sometimes they have 8 months to where they're stuck with winter. And that's why a wood stove is their main source of heating on the island, because it's very expensive to have gas heating out there because it has to come and fill up, and it's very expensive. So they chop their own wood. They have to harvest it from lumber yards, and it's quite the grueling process. When you say from start to finish to get everything in the wood stove, they have to do 6 to 8 months out of the year, whereas we can just push a button on our thermostat. It's quite the perspective shift when you realize what all they have to do. So the next thing is there's only one clinic on the island that's open 24/7, and the closest hospital is on mainland Alaska. So if you get hurt, you better hope that you can hold it until you can get to the island. So to give you an idea, is one of the teams that I went with, there was a guy that wasn't paying attention, and this girl had her hand on the stump when a mole came down on it and broke her pinky. And she had to wait until she got finished with the trip a week later to get there and get treated at the local hospital. So accidents, if they happen, you're in trouble. So you've got to pay attention. You got to really make sure you know what you're doing with how to handle your tools. But that's just a perspective. There is, in the town that we stayed in, there was a little truck there with like this carriage in the back for EMS. And I asked Joel about it. He said, "Oh, no one's ever in that thing. It's volunteer ran." So to give you an idea, there's no ambulance. If you get hurt, no one's coming to save you. The next thing, there's 2 state troopers on the entire island. No local cops or law enforcement. So again, if something happens, someone breaks in, you better have to wait a couple hours for them to show up. So a lot of people, they really enforce the Second Amendment law there to protect their stuff. And then the next thing is all fire and EMT departments are volunteer ran. Last thing, on this island, which I mentioned is about a 3-hour drive, there's only 3 grocery stores throughout the whole island to feed everyone. All right, so who did we help? So we focus mainly around 2 families, or 3 people to be specific. The first is Joel and Trish. You can show that picture. Joel and Trish Buchanan, they met in Ketchikan a couple years back after they'd already had families. And they actually met, and they both loved Jesus, and that's really how they bonded. And they got married, and then they moved over to Prince of Wales Island, and they built this home that I'm going to show you. So that is Paradise Found. That's what they call it. And the name behind their place is in the Bible when Jesus is hanging on the cross, and he turns to the sinners next to him, and he says, "Surely you will be found in paradise," or I'll see you in paradise, basically. And that's how they that is how they name their houses. Paradise is found. Like, it's a gorgeous view. So you can go to the next picture. This is their home. The way you have to build in Prince of Wales is you buy the land, then you build it yourself. You can't get contractors out there unless you're willing to pay a lot of money. So Joel built this house from the ground up with the knowledge that he learned, as well as the help of other missions teams. And then the next picture is just a wider view. As you can see, on the right side here is their wood shed. So that's where they hold all their tools. And then on the other side is the love shack, which is their home it's big so they can house missionaries. They built it with the intention of being able to house missions teams. And so that extra cabin is an extra 8 to 10 people that they can sleep so that they can do more work on the island. Okay. And then if you go to the next one more. So this is Dave Jackson. He was part of the Beaverton Foursquare team that came up a couple years back, and he helped to lead the team. And he fell in love with the place and the people so much that he bought land up there. And now he's developing a spot so that he can do the exact same thing that Joel and Trish have, which is to house missionaries so that they can have more work. So he is building a place up there so that he can have missions teams come up and do more work for the island and more work for the natives and locals there. Dave is a great guy. Him and his wife Tammy, they actually live in Oregon right now. He's been retired for a bit, but we got to help. I'll explain later that we got to help him with his property and help develop it and get it in its beginning stages to prepare it. So next thing is, what work did we do? We initially had some plans as far as going and helping the locals, and as we had one vision and one mission that we were going with, and then that changed. And I think it was a God thing, based on how I'll explain it here. As soon as we got in the truck, so we get off the boat, we load up our luggage into the truck in the shuttle bus. Me and Emma get into the truck with Joel, and a couple minutes down the road, he says, so I wrote it here. As soon as I got in the truck with Joel and Emma and drove to their house, the rest of the team in the shuttle bus, he told us a word that he'd received about our team being no fear. So this was because due to the pandemic, due to COVID, there were 6 to 10 teams scheduled to come this year. All of them canceled, except for ours. In fact, while we were there, they got a call from their last team that was supposed to come and help that said, we can't come this year. So we were the only team that was able to come. But in this planning, I knew God wanted us to be there. I knew that he was going before us, and I knew that he had something ready for us through the whole process of, we had to get tested for COVID. We had to go through this whole all of these hoops to jump through, but I think we all came back negative for COVID. We all got there safely, and we were able to be the only team that's coming this year. We weren't allowed into the villages, as I said, because there's a lot of elderly people in the native villages, and, a group of lower 48 foreigners. To the natives, we're foreigners, right? Because they've been living there for hundreds of years, but we're the foreigners. So they were very eerie about having this group of foreigners and teenagers and young adults come and help them, because what if they had COVID? That could wipe out their whole village. And so we were very limited to the work we could do. And so the focus of the trip turned primarily to missionary support, which, if you know any missionaries, or if you know anyone in the mission field, you know that supporting our missionaries is very important, because they are living in a place by themselves or with just their family. And that's the help. The help they get is from what we can send and what we can provide for them. And so even if it meant that we just went and worked and just poured into them spiritually, emotionally, even if we did that, it made the trip worth it, because we got to help and bolster the missionaries. So this meant coming alongside them for practical projects and work that helps to sustain them and those in need during the winter. It meant encouraging them and fellowshipping with them. And it's also important that we gave them spiritual support, because the Christian population there is about 1%. It's very low. There's one still functioning church on the island. At one time there were 4 or 5, but now there's one, because of just how little the Christian population has just puttered out. And so they don't get a lot of interaction like we get, on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. They don't get this. And so when we get to come and we get to help them, it's encouraging for them. It bolsters them, and it lets them go further. And so we got to do devotions every night out of the book of Galatians. We read the word, we shared our hearts together, cried together, all of those things. We spoke words of prophecy and life into them about their upcoming ministry, words of healing. One of the things that Joel was worried about is a couple months back, Trish was stacking firewood, and a round slipped out of her hand, fell right on her foot, and shattered her foot. And as you know, it took a while for them to get to the hospital. It was a long recovery for them. And so Joel, he's now worried that, what if he's not around because what if he's not around because she's by herself throughout the week? So a little bit about Joel and Trish is Joel works in mainland Ketchikan. He doesn't work at his home. So every week on Friday or on Sunday, he takes a boat out to the mainland, and he works throughout the week there, and then he comes home on the weekends. Whereas Trish stays at home, and she works an hour and a half away at the closest grocery store. So think about the work there, and we can drive 10 minutes to our job. Well, most of them have to leave the island to have their job to pay their bills. But some of them have the fortunate factor that they get to drive an hour and a half or to the closest place. But we're very blessed with the type of community that we have. What work did we do? To be specific, first thing is we cut firewood. You can show that first picture. When we got there, the pile on the left was waiting for us because it had already been cut, and we just had to stack it. So before lunchtime, this is how awesome this team is. Before lunchtime, the first day of work, that pile was stacked and loaded. So, and then if you look at the next picture, again, this is a picture of their house. If you can see on the second and third floors, you can see wood peeking through the banisters. That is a 3 to 4 year supply worth of wood for them. Every year it has to be rotated. So the stuff on the top is what they use in order to heat their home for that current year. Below it, that's next year's. Below that, the year after, and then the fourth year is at the woodshed. So the first thing we did was we rotated wood. threw it up the stairs, hauled it up, and that was probably the hardest day, wouldn't you say, hauling wood, because those things can get heavy. They're wet and they're big wood, and so we're hauling them up, stacking it. So that was one of the first things that we did. Next picture, we did a lot of firewood cutting. You can go to the next one. So the boys got to learn how to chop wood, learn how to split, right? By the end of it, these two were champs. Some of this wood is really rotted and really, it's knotty, and so it's hard to split. Has anyone here split wood before? So you know the difficulty of how hard it can be sometimes. Well, a lot of these cedars have a lot of knots in them, and so getting through that wood was pretty difficult, wasn't it, Gabe? But we got through it. By the time we were over, it was done. You can go to the next picture. And so we all got to split some wood, and then go to the next one. The ladies were stacking the wood, so they were dodging flying chunks of wood, and they would wait until we would pause, and they'd run in and grab a couple, and they'd go and stack it. You can go to the next one. So this is the wood that we chopped and stacked for one of the locals there named Chaz. He actually helped us get from one ferry to the next ferry, and so to say thank you to him, we went to his house and we chopped and stacked wood. Because he's so rarely at his home in Prince of Wales, because he works also in Ketchikan, he's so rarely at his home. What we stacked there is a year's supply for him. So he wasn't even at his home. So when he comes back home, he's going to find a stack of wood already ready for him to go for the whole year. So that's a blessing just for one local that we helped out. The next thing, Gabe, you'll love this one. This was kindling. Has anyone had to chop or make kindling before for their fire? So what you might know is in order to start fires, you have to start with smaller wood. This is kindling. So you take bigger blocks and you chop them into smaller and smaller pieces until they're big enough to light. You can go to the next one, and you can just keep going until you get to the boxes. So we chopped that much kindling. So if you look, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then there's 3 boxes behind that. So 15 boxes of kindling is what we chopped. That is a 1.5 year supply for Joel and Trish. So that will last them all the way until 2021. But here's how great their heart is, because as soon as we said, this is how much we had, they said, great, now we have a ton to give away. So they're probably going to give over half, if not more of this to other people that can't do it themselves. And then they're going to go and chop their own kindling. But the thing is, what we provided here is enough to help, say, some old lady that's not able to chop them herself on the island, or an elderly couple, or someone with a disability that has to be warm during the winter months. But these people were able to provide that. So the kindling that we chopped is going to go all over the island to help people start their fires to warm their homes during the winter. The next thing, you can go to the next picture. Like I mentioned, on the left here is the Love Shack. So Kayla and Emma got to help, and me and Aaron got to help finish the Love Shack. So like I mentioned, it's an extension of their cabin. It's to help house more missionaries. You can go to the next one. But we got there, and I told Joel about Kayla's expertise with flipping houses and helping to restore stuff like that. And she's like, yeah, I know how to lay tile. And Joel was like, you do? Because I had a project I wasn't going to get to for months on my weekends off. Because remember, he has to travel home for the weekends, and he gets 1 day to spend with his wife during the weekend. And so any maintenance that he has to do, he does on his weekends. So when we got there, just thank you, God, because she knew how to lay tile. So she was able to finish the tile in the kitchen and the bathroom alongside with Emma, who also got to help. And so now the tile is done in the Love Shack, so that in the bathroom and in the kitchen. So that's one less project that they don't have to do to finish that house. And the next thing is one thing that me and Aaron worked on is sanding the shelves, because wood is very expensive there if you get it pre-cut. if you get it already milled, like what we would see in Lowe's and Home Depot, they don't have a Lowe's and Home Depot on the island. They have to cut their own wood and mill it themselves. And so a lot of their shelves are slabs of wood that they get cut. And then we have to sand it down and stain it, and then they use it for shelves. It's very beautiful. But that was one of the things we did. So the Love Shack was basically finished except for a couple odd jobs that we had to help with. And then the next thing that we did was, or this was another thing we did, was we helped to develop Dave's property. So you remember I told you about Dave Jackson, who just bought land there. Well, in order to develop the land, there's a lot of trees. There's a lot of overburden and things that are in the way in order for him to lay concrete and build his house. So we got to help out during a very cold and wet day, right, guys? It was pouring, raining outside, and we were on the coast, so the wind was blasting us. But we chopped down small trees, overburdened, threw it on a fire. It was so wet that it didn't catch, but it'll burn one of these days. But we got to be in the starting phases of a missionary's home on the island. So our story is now planted in that property there. So when there's missionaries coming 10 to 15 years now, staying at that house, we were able to be a part of the beginning processes. So we basically prepared their property for loggers to come in and cut down the trees. The next thing, I'm going to let Nate talk about this one, if you want to make sure your mic is unmuted. Big thing that we did, or that, what's that?
He had already did his.
So the next thing that was done is, like I said, maintenance on the island. When he comes home, Joel has to do a lot of vehicle and car maintenance, and it cuts away at his time with his family. So guess who has some entry-level mechanic skills that was able to help out? And so, Nate, if you just want to talk about how you helped, you can go to the next picture, Jake. Just talk about how you helped and what you did, just to help them with their vehicles. And
So I worked on 3 of their quads. That was his main quad. That's the one that he rides. And the first thing he started working on was his brake job because his brakes had gotten soft. He told me that it was the second time since 2004 that they had been touched. So I was just able to open them up, take the brakes off, clean them, adjust them, bleed them, and make them not soft so he can stop. That's kind of important.
that's important.
On all of them, we swapped batteries, cleaned all the terminals because they just hadn't been cleaned. There was acid on them. We changed some of the connections out. The second quad I worked on, it was his loaner quad, and somebody had rolled it. They rolled it forward, so it's supposed to look like this. The quad was sitting like this. So I just went in, swapped out a couple little support pieces, brackets, found some more things that needed to be replaced that we'll get to at some point.
Yeah, you already got projects lined up for next year.
Basic maintenance that hasn't been done in years.
Yeah. So just those little things added up for Joel. Hours, because you guys spent a couple days working on all of those. So that would have been a week's worth of time for just one man to be working on himself.
Yeah, it was really cool to see when he hopped on his quad and he hit the brakes. He's very tough. I have a new definition of man. By the way, Kevin, I earned a lot of man points this week.
You did. They both did.
I want to say Avengers.
But just to see his face light up and the smile on his face, I was not expecting. It was really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's amazing the work that we're able to do to help them. So to give you from a reference, our trip was 9 days long. 2 of those days were travel, getting there and getting back. So we basically had a week with them. 4 of those days we had 3 different big projects going on. Kayla and Emma working on tile, Nate working on vehicles and stuff, and then the rest of us doing odd jobs and kindling. That's why if you ask Dave to do some kindling, he said if he never has to touch a hatchet again, he won't be sad. But it was fun. So we had basically 3 different things going on throughout those 4 days, throughout rain, throughout sun, all of those things. The remaining 3 days, 2 of those were spent fishing. So you can go to the next slide. I say fishing because we didn't catch much, unfortunately. But we did help him figure out which spots not to fish in. So if you look at the positives there, we got got to go and the first day we did some spin casting to catch salmon, didn't catch much. And then the next day we got to go out on the water in the ocean where we saw whales and sea otters and jellyfish. We pulled up a shark, 2 of them actually, pulled up 2 sharks. But guess what? We didn't catch any salmon or any halibut, which is the stuff we were going for. So, but now they know where not to fish. You'll see there on that grill there is Emma and Jaden, is that right? Were the VIPs of the fishing trip because they pulled up 4 sea bass that we were able to cook on the fire and eat. Some of us ate more parts than desired. So these 3 here got to try the delicacy of fish eyes. So, well, 2 of them swallowed them. 1 of them didn't make it all the way. I did mad props to Gabe because I was gagging just thinking about it. I was like, So we had a great time getting to do that. A lot of great sights. It was very cold, wasn't it? Yeah. It was raining during the whole time, so some of us got soaked and we were really cold in the wind. But we didn't catch much, unfortunately. But like I said, now they know where not to set their lines, where not to put their stuff. But next year, we're hoping that we can pull up some food. We did get to eat the sea bass, like I said. So that was the first time some of them had fresh cooked bass. And then the last day, we got to do some sightseeing because that's never a bad thing to get to see the island, get to see where you're helping. So we got to go to a fishing hatchery, and it's called a fish ladder because the salmon swim uphill. So we got to see the salmon jump up the river, and then we got to see a couple other sites like going to the lake and some good mountain views. But we had a great time. We got to do a lot of work for Joel and Trish and Dave and really just pour into them. And even though we didn't directly get to work with the natives and villages, the work we did with Joel, Trish, and Dave helps to free up their time so that they can minister and help the people of Prince of Wales. Like I said, there are things that we don't realize are going to help them because of the work that we did, like the kindling and fixing the quads and the love shack. There is seeds that have been laid. Because of this very hardworking team, which I'm very proud of. So now we're going to do a Q&A. I've got a couple questions for our team. If you guys just want to share this mic and then y'all can share that mic. I'm going to just ask the question. I'm going to have each of you answer based on that question. So I'll step over here. The first being, we'll start with Nate. What was the best and most rewarding part of the trip for you?
What I said about seeing Joel smile, just, very tough man. Just seeing him kind of light up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Joel, he's a very reserved man, but you all know how much it means to you when you see a man like that tear up and cry because of the work that we were able to do. And it makes me emotional thinking about it because they're such great people. Gabe?
Just being able to stack all the firewood for Joel so that way he can have some time to relax with his wife and stuff.
Yeah.
I got to share my story with Trish and Joel, and the next morning they kind of opened up to me about one of their sons they lost. It was a really warming, moment for me just to bond with them. So
really got to share their hearts. Jane?
It was probably the fishing because I got to watch Nate and Gabe eat fish eyeballs. It was just really funny.
For me, it was probably their story about how God has just provided for them. Whenever they have a need, they don't know how to feel. They had to lay concrete. They didn't know how to lay concrete. They said they were just going to do the best they could with the group they had. They were starting to lay it. Some random guy walks up and said, "Hey, I heard you needed help." He stayed there for the day. He had worked his way through college by pouring concrete, so he knew exactly what to do. And he poured the concrete and left that day, and they never saw him again. And just that has happened over and over again. And then when Trish heard I did tile, she goes, that's the last project that we have for the Love Shack. It's so perfect, because Joel's like, well, we don't know how to do that. So he's like, well, now you're part of that story too. So we got to do that as well. And also just how this team has proven our dedication to working and serving, because when we first got there, Joel and Trish were very skeptical. I don't want to say skeptical, but they were like, do you really know how to do this? Because a lot of teams have gotten there and say, oh yeah, I can do that. I can do that. Some guy offered to help Trish with her heating in her truck, and he pulled all the stuff out of her truck and was getting ready to put it back in, but he had to leave. So now she's left this truck with all the pieces out on the ground. She doesn't know how to fix. Her son has to come back and put it together, even though he didn't see how to, take it apart. So things like that have happened to them. And then they've got Nate, and he fixes all their four-wheelers. And so just the epiphany of these guys know what they're doing. They're here to serve. They can help us. He was like, do you really know how to do tile? Let me ask you some questions first before I let you work on the Love Shack. And then once it got finished, he was like, oh, can you do the bathroom? Or can you do this room? Yep. How about the man shack? I was like, oh, here we go. I was like, he must think I did a good job. But that was just like the Sunday before we left, is talking about God, having faith in God's faithfulness. And that's exactly what happened this week.
Praise the Lord.
I think just like Nate said, just seeing Joel's face. I mean, he has to leave his wife every week, and the look on his face when he realized he didn't have to worry about her being in the cold, chopping wood or kindling or any of that. And just seeing that we were able to provide that for him, and just let him have that peace of mind while he's gone. That meant so much. And just kind of, we worked so hard. We were tired and cold every day, but there's always Aaron there with a silly joke and
A pun.
Yeah, a pun.
Way
specifically.
too many puns.
Too many. We lost count. And Nate and Gabe just being silly and cracking us all up, and Jaden always keeping a smile on her face even when she was miserable. But it was just it was just awesome seeing the way the team all pushed through and helped each other, and that alone spoke measures.
And for me, the best and most rewarding part is this right here, is this team I had the pleasure of being able to lead. I'm so very proud of each and every one of you and the hard work that you dedicated. And it was an honor to get to watch you guys work and do what you guys did. So the next question is, what was the hardest or most challenging thing for you?
Patience, being on a boat for 2 days straight, hours wet and not pulling up anything. Just, sitting there. That was probably the hardest part for me, but we all on boat, we're making jokes, making the best of it. So.
Definitely the first day, just taking wood up and down the stairs multiple at a time. That was pretty hard.
And it's grueling. And imagine if they had to do that, because like I said, we were the only team that were able to come. And so we were able to give them the necessities just to make it through that year. And now they don't have to rotate all that wood. That would have taken them a couple weeks to do, and a lot of hard work. So.
I guess just the overwhelming amount of rain. That's the hardest part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Definitely the logging. Because it was pouring down rain, it was freezing cold, and we were walking on rocks all day, dragging wood back and forth. It was just annoying, and you had to be very, very patient with it.
It was pretty grueling, but you were a champ. You killed it.
I just came to chaperone Jaden, and they put me right to work, so it worked out great for me. No, the hardest part was either the trip home, which was 26 hours, that was grueling, or just the realization that I'm a lazy bum, because you get there and these guys have full-time jobs, and they come home and they chop wood, and they never get a chance to just rest. They're just working. So to be able to pour into them and help them out, it was very rewarding.
I think I'm with Gabe on this one. Carrying wood up 3 flights of stairs in the rain, that was hard. It was heavy, but honestly, the hardest part for me was leaving. I just wanted to keep doing more. I knew there was more to be done. And it was so incredible, just their example, their heart and their servanthood and their readiness to give. Everything that we did, they weren't like, oh, great, we don't have to do it now. It was, great, who can we give this to? Mm-hmm. And that was the best part for me. And I just wanted to keep doing that and just being surrounded by that presence of the Lord. That was hard for me to leave and realize I'm fallen short in some areas, so I can bring that back home with me. So.
Hardest part for me was probably seeing my shortcomings as a leader. There were some times where I was like, man, I didn't want to be out there. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to wake up at 3 a.m. But, it was something I had to push through, and it was something that sometimes we got to put on a brave face and smile through it. But it was worth it in the end. So the hardest part was probably that. Not the last thing. Third question, how did God speak to you during this trip? And then the next question, just to give you an idea, is where did you see God in this trip? So just the first one is, how did God speak to you during this trip?
Answer both of them?
Just the first one.
I think the biggest thing for me was just the realization that, this isn't it. Mooresville isn't the only place where God can move. We're 3,500 miles away, something like that on the other side. And people have the same, they're doing their own thing, speaking the same language we do on the other side of the state. So just that realization that, we could just, bigger things are coming.
We didn't have our phones for a week, and it felt really nice to not just pick up our phone out of habit and go on Instagram or something. So I feel like God was telling me to, put my phone down at least one day during the week and focus on Him and go out and help my dad with yard work or something.
That's a big deal. That is a great thing for someone of their age and just teenagers to stay saying I'm going to put down technology for a day. That's awesome.
God spoke to me in different ways, but mainly was just teamwork and support, that we were there together for one purpose. So.
It felt really nice to not have my phone being blown up 24/7 and actually get it to not have service for an entire week. It was really fun.
To me, it was just, again, having faith in God's faithfulness. And that He will provide. You think, I've got to do all this on my own. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. But if you are just obedient, He will provide. And that's what I learned from Joel and Trish. Amen.
I think for me, the biggest thing was just learning to rest in the Lord and be silent. It's so quiet out there. Besides the occasional truck going by, you don't hear anything but your own noises. And that just challenged me so much. In my schedule, it's go, 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 be on my phone, be on this, call another person. And the Lord just really spoke to me about slowing down and resting in His presence. Though we were working the hardest I've ever worked, we rested really well. And it was so energizing, and I just felt so fed. So I would say that just the presence of the Lord and just sitting in that and resting in that and trusting Him to provide. So
God spoke to me. He said, I got this. Whenever I doubted, whenever I was worried, He said He got this. Whenever I was worried we weren't going to catch the next plane or something wasn't going to go right, I've got this. And so it helped to develop my trust in the Lord in the little and big things. So, all right. Where did you see God in this trip?
I think for me, it was in the beauty of the nature. Last year, there's more deers than cars. We almost hit, at least 10 deers. And just to see, when we were out on the boat, we saw sea lions, sea otters, whales, and they were all kind of doing their own thing. The sea otters were playing with each other, and just to see how complex and diverse and how each little thing has its own little job, and all that was created by God, and just the beauty of that.
Amen. Same thing as Nathan, just going to the viewpoints and looking out just really reminded me how big God really is. So.
Again, artistry in His creation.
Definitely with Joel and Trish, just to see how blessed they are, with people just coming and helping them yearly, just year round. It was really cool.
And just them being blessed in their spirit. They have to work so hard, and usually people be just burned out and, stuck in the mud. They feel like, but they are just so happy and so blessed, and they know how rich they are. And that is a huge blessing.
Mine was a combination of all three. Definitely seeing the whales, and just there's a moment on the beach where I just closed my eyes and just breathed in, and I swear I felt like I was breathing in the Holy Spirit. It was so incredible just seeing nature like that. definitely saw God there. God in the provision of getting from our flights. We were praying through that whole flight. Luke kept leaning over going, I don't know what we're going to do. Like, we're going to have to run, like, get everybody to run. And I was like, all right, we'll get there. Like, just keep praying. We're just going to keep praying. And it was just incredible when the stewardess came up and told us we had extra time. And God's provision just in little ways throughout the trip like that. And yeah, most of all, Joel and Trish, just their heart and their mission. You see it in their eyes and the way they talk to people, their patience, all that. So,
I think I saw God in the fellowship and the relationships that we developed. I think all of you helped. You fell in love with Joel and Trish and Dave and who they are and the people, and just seeing God's people gathered in one place. We got to do communion with them, which they don't get to do very often. We get to do it like once a month or something. They do it with other people maybe once or twice a year, and so we got to do communion with them, and just seeing God in that time of gathering. It was awesome. All right. If you could give someone a piece of advice that wanted to come next year, what would it be?
Be prepared. Be prepared for hard work. It's not a vacation. We were very blessed to be able to have showers every day. It's not like any other mission trip. Most mission trip. This is advice for any mission trip. Come expecting less, because it was not what I expected.
Come on.
Bring rain pants.
I saw that.
I would say don't listen to Luke about the rain pants.
I admit I said that one thing would be sufficient, and it was not sufficient.
Yeah, we were on the boat, and I'm sitting there, my legs are soaking wet, and I look at Luke, and he goes, "You a little wet?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "You probably should have brought rain pants." I said, "Thank you. That would have been nice to know."
Yeah.
Bring Grundens and extra Tufts.
Those are boots and bibs, basically.
I would say definitely pray before you get there. I prayed that God would use me and just help me serve wherever I could be, and He found a place for me.
Amen.
I would say be in the Spirit. Just surround yourself with the Lord and His Word. You're not going to make it through the cold rain, the hard work, none of that. I was right there with Gabe. I asked Luke, do I need those bibs? And he said, I think we'll be okay. I was not okay. But Miss Trish did provide. She did give me hers because she wasn't on the boat.
Me, Kayla, and Aaron were the only ones with rain.
And the rest of us were left to freeze. But like I said, Miss Trish really came through for me. So that was awesome. But for real, just being in the presence of the Lord, because we're spoiled here. It's warm, it's comfy, but it's not there. And so it was really by the Spirit of the Lord that I kept a smile on my face, and then I kept working. Yeah. So definitely be in touch with Him.
I would say advice for next year, expand your worldview. Be ready to have skills and try foods, things that you would never have done before. Be ready to do something different. So, all right, last question. What about the lifestyle and the way they live in Alaska expanded your worldview?
There's only like, 3 or 4 hours of darkness there, and all the daylight that they have, they use it. We were up before 6 o'clock. Most of us were up before 6 o'clock every day, just preparing for the day, and they get it done. So don't be lazy.
Amen.
Just seeing how every summer Joel has to take his only rest day to go out and chop wood, move wood, kindling stuff, because they don't have air conditioning and heaters, and just how lucky we are to have that stuff. So.
I guess it goes back to a biblical term about how the person who takes a nap loses their harvest, as far as don't be lazy, Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I really admire the weather and the temperature and just how hard they work for just like their lifestyle, and yeah.
So I said, so that means, Tommy, you can get her up at 3 a.m. every morning, right?
Thanks.
To start working her.
She said she liked working hard.
Prove it. For me, I'd worked in Alaska before, so I knew the conditions and how hard they work up there. But what was amazing to me is, again, how God will transform your plans into his plans, because the cultures are so different there with the native tribes. And, they are very skeptical of, new people coming in. And Joel he's helped, one tribe, and then another tribe will say, they'll get word to that tribe, say, yeah, he's helping us over here. He did this for us and didn't expect anything in return. And so now he's got other tribes asking him, hey, why don't you come out and see us? Why don't you come out and see us? People he's never spoken to before. It's just the word of mouth that he's doing God's work or some service.
Amen.
I think it was the diligence. If Joel just kept pushing this on us, if you don't prepare ahead of time, you're going to suffer for it later. So just being diligent and getting up and taking care of what you need to do, and not grumbling. And just like Kayla said, just respecting the other cultures around you. I feel like a lot of our culture, we're so ready to share what Jesus has done for us because that's exciting and that's good. But that's not always received the way we want it to be. And just being diligent to listen to that and respect their culture and know how they work, and they'll see it in the way you act. So that was really eye-opening to me.
For me, I'd say being a good steward of what we have. For Joel and Trish are great examples. After every meal, we would clean up, we would do dishes. We wouldn't wait until that evening or until it got full. If something broke down, instead of calling Jerry, they'd have to fix it themselves. The wood we would clean up, the things that we would do, it's you do the job, then you clean up. You do this, you break it, you fix it. Don't call someone else. Don't rely on someone else. Learn how to do it. Take care of the things that God has blessed you with. If you're faithful with a little, you can be faithful with a lot. And I would say that's how I was expanded. Is I see in my home, there's things that I could take care of better because God blessed me with it, and so that's how I was expanded. But I think that was the last question. So I think we're good. If you wanted to wrap it up, so.
Well, I just want to, along with you, just thank all these guys and girls for what they did. Pray, where is the Lord sending you? It's good to see where other people go, but where is God sending you? And I'll leave us with that today. Let's pray. Lord, we're so thankful again for this team and even for those in this congregation who helped send them financially, or those who prayed for them as they went out. We're thankful for the partnership of Abundant Life. But for these who did the work, God, we thank you for them. Lord, for Joel and Trish and Dave, we thank you for them and for the ministry that they are doing there in Alaska. And really, Lord, for all of our missionaries who are doing your work. God, I pray that you send people, resources, yes, but more importantly, people that can come alongside them to encourage them so that your kingdom is expanded. We thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Well, God bless you. God bless you. You're dismissed.